Welcome, the rare gems. She didn't ask to be strong. Life gave her no other choice. Some women are shaped by comfort. Others, like Sigma females, are shaped by pressure, silence, and the kind of emotional weight no child should ever carry. This isn't about trauma for attention or pain turned into a trend. It's about truth. Raw, often invisible, but deeply felt truth. Sigma females don't wear their wounds loudly. They internalize them, study them, and turn them into quiet power. You won't find them begging for understanding or chasing validation. They've outgrown that. Why? Because the people who were supposed to love them unconditionally either disappeared, controlled them, or only showed up when it suited them. So instead of depending on others, they learned to depend on themselves. But don't confuse their emotional independence with ease. Every ounce of that calm, every boundary they protect, and every choice to walk alone came from a place of early emotional survival. They didn't choose solitude because they're antisocial. They chose it because it's the only space where they're finally free to be themselves, without judgment, manipulation, or performance. If you're a Sigma female, or if you're beginning to realize this might be who you are, this is your space. This is your story, told honestly, without fluff. These scars you carry, they didn't ruin you, they refined you. Let's get started, the rare gems. Number 1, emotionally inconsistent parenting. Made her emotionally self-regulating. Imagine being a child and never knowing what version of your parent you'd get. One day, they're warm and caring, making you feel seen. The next, they're cold, distant, or angry, for reasons you couldn't even understand. That kind of emotional inconsistency messes with your wiring early on, and for a Sigma female, it became the start of a lifelong pattern. She stopped trusting that anyone would show up for her emotionally. So she did the only thing she could. She turned inward. When she felt sad, she learned not to cry out loud. When she felt angry or afraid, she stuffed it down and figured out how to cope silently. She didn't want to be a burden. She didn't want to trigger another wave of unpredictability from the adults around her. This isn't the kind of story people see on the outside. From the outside, she looked like a well-behaved kid, maybe even a little too quiet or too mature for her age. But on the inside, she was constantly managing emotional chaos, with no support, no outlet, and no map. Over time, this turned her into a self-regulating machine. She doesn't rely on anyone to help her calm down, make decisions, or pick up the pieces. Not because she doesn't feel, she feels everything. But she's trained herself to feel it all alone. The downside? She often struggles to let people in, or to believe someone will stay consistent. The upside? She's rock solid. She doesn't crumble under pressure. She doesn't need constant reassurance. She's her own anchor. So if you're a Sigma female, and this hits home, don't mistake your independence for coldness. What you built was survival. What you carry is strength. You didn't grow up emotionally spoiled. You grew up emotionally aware. And that awareness, that's something most people spend a lifetime trying to find. You already have it. Own it. Number 2. She grew up feeling emotionally smarter than the adults around her. Even as a little girl, the Sigma female could feel things most kids her age didn't even notice. The tension in the room, the things left unsaid, the fake smiles, the lies people told themselves just to get through the day. She noticed all of it. And while the adults around her went on pretending everything was fine, she silently picked up on the truth. She'd hear one thing but feel another. A parent saying, "I'm proud of you," with no warmth behind it. A caregiver laughing while clearly falling apart. She knew when someone was emotionally disconnected, even if no one else saw it. That early awareness created a kind of loneliness most people don't talk about. How do you explain to anyone, especially as a child, that the grown-ups you're supposed to trust feel emotionally behind you? That you're the one quietly managing the mood in the room while they're losing control? This made her grow up fast, but not in a forced, I had to take care of everyone kind of way, in a mental way. She started realizing she couldn't rely on these people for wisdom, guidance, or emotional stability. So she made an inner vow, I'll figure this life out on my own. And she did. Today, that same Sigma woman still sees through people. She can spot manipulation, projection, and fake humility from a mile away. She's emotionally fluent in a world that barely speaks the language. But that gift came with a cost, because she had to become her own guide long before she should have. So if this sounds like you, know this. You didn't just grow up. You woke up. Early. You had to teach yourself what life never taught you. And yes, it's made you independent. But it's also made you wise, sharp, and unshakably aware. That's not a weakness. That's your edge. Number 3. Her independence wasn't praised, it was punished. From a young age, the Sigma female showed signs of quiet independence. She wasn't clingy. She didn't always follow the crowd. She liked doing things her own way, asking questions that made adults uncomfortable, or spending time alone without needing anyone's attention. You'd think that kind of self-reliance would be celebrated, but for her, it wasn't. Instead, it was treated like a threat. Her quiet strength was misunderstood as rebellion. Her calm detachment was labeled rude or cold. She wasn't loud or dramatic, but because she didn't fall in line or look for approval, adults saw her as difficult. Teachers, parents, relatives, they tried to correct her. They told her to smile more, be more obedient, be more normal. But deep down she knew she wasn't wired like the rest. What they didn't realize is she wasn't being defiant. She was just being herself. She didn't crave control, she craved freedom, but instead of nurturing that, they tried to crush it. The more they pushed, the more she pulled away. The more they tried to contain her, the more unshakable she became. That resistance built something in her, a steel backbone, a refusal to be shaped by other people's expectations. She learned to trust her own voice because no one else seemed to understand it, and that shaped her into the Sigma woman she is now. Someone who doesn't beg for approval, doesn't follow trends, and doesn't need external validation to feel complete. So if your independence was met with punishment instead of praise, don't think you were the problem. You weren't too much or too distant. You were just surrounded by people who feared what they couldn't control. They couldn't mold you, and that scared them. But here's the truth. They didn't break you. They built you, stronger, sharper, and more unmovable than ever. And that's your quiet superpower. Number 4, she learned to translate silence, not words. In most homes, words are how people connect. In hers, words were often meaningless, or worse, used to hide the truth. I'm fine didn't mean fine. I love you came without warmth. Promises were made and broken. Apologies were rare. The adults around her either avoided emotions altogether or threw them around in confusing bursts. So instead of listening to what people said, she learned to pay attention to what they didn't say. As a child, the Sigma female became a quiet observer. She watched body language, picked up on tone shifts, sensed tension before it ever exploded. She knew when someone was lying, even if their words were perfect. She could feel when someone was angry, even if they smiled through it. She started picking up on energy, not explanations. Why? Because that's where the truth lived. This skill wasn't something she asked for. It was a survival tool. In a home where emotional chaos or neglect was the norm, she had to feel her way through situations to stay safe, to stay out of the line of fire, to avoid becoming a problem. While other kids were learning fairy tales, she was learning how to read the room like a radar. Fast forward to now, she's the woman who notices everything. She listens to the pauses between your words, watches your eyes when you speak, and senses when something's off, even before you do. She's not interested in surface-level talk. She trusts energy, not explanations. Some might say she's too sensitive or overthinking. No, she's just emotionally fluent in a world full of noise. She reads silence better than most people read books. If you're this woman, don't doubt that instinct. You developed emotional X-ray vision out of necessity. Now it's one of your greatest gifts. Your ability to see through the mask. That's not paranoia, that's precision. Number 5. She was the emotional dumping ground for everyone else. Growing up, the Sigma female didn't have a safe space to land. She was the safe space for everyone else. She became the emotional support system for people who should have been supporting her. An unstable parent leaned on her like a therapist. A needy sibling always turned to her to calm things down. Chaos in the household. She was expected to handle it, absorb it, clean it up, quietly. No one asked how she was doing. Her emotions were either ignored or treated like an inconvenience. If she cried, she was told to stop being dramatic. If she got overwhelmed, she was met with guilt or blame. So eventually she just stopped sharing. She pushed everything deep inside and took care of everyone else instead. Over time, this turned into a strange superpower, but it came at a cost. On the outside, she looked composed, even stoic, but that calm wasn't peace. It was emotional exhaustion. Years of carrying other people's baggage, processing everyone else's chaos while having nowhere to unload her own. She became the girl who always listened, always showed up, always held it together, even when she was breaking inside. Now, as an adult, people still come to her with their problems, often without even realizing they're doing it. She gives off that calm, grounded energy. But underneath, there's a deep, quiet fatigue. Because being the strong one for too long hurts, especially when nobody ever asked if you're okay. If this sounds like you, know this. You weren't born to be everyone's emotional sponge. You were just made to believe that your needs didn't matter. But they do. Your feelings deserve space. Your silence deserves rest. You're not cold, you're tired, not heartless, just full. You've carried more than most ever will. And it's okay to put it down now. You don't have to earn love by holding everyone together. It's time to hold yourself and let others rise to meet you. Number 6. Her individuality was labeled too much. She was never one of the easy girls, the ones who smiled on cue, followed every rule, and stayed within the lines. No, the Sigma female stood out early. She questioned things. She thought deeply. She spoke when something didn't sit right. Or sometimes, she didn't speak at all because she was too busy observing everything around her. Either way, someone always had something to say. You're too quiet. You're too intense. You take things too seriously. At every stage of her life, she was told she was too much of something. Too opinionated, too curious, too independent, too sensitive, too bold. It didn't matter how she showed up. Her uniqueness always seemed to make others uncomfortable. And here's the painful part. Those words stuck. Even if she didn't show it, they chipped away at her, made her question herself. For a while, she tried to shrink. She dimmed her light, softened her voice, held back her ideas, just to avoid the sting of rejection. But it didn't work. Because even when she tried to blend in, she still didn't fit. That's when something shifted. She stopped trying to win approval that was never hers to begin with. She stopped molding herself to make other people feel comfortable, and she realized something powerful. Being too much just means you were never meant to be small. Now she doesn't chase validation. She doesn't water herself down. She's not everyone's cup of tea, and she's finally okay with that. If this hits home, here's your reminder. Your intensity is not a flaw. Your depth isn't a burden. You weren't made to be manageable. You were made to be real. People may have tried to label your individuality as too much, but all they really meant was they couldn't handle your truth. And that's their problem, not yours. Number 7. She was always the adult in the room. While other kids were busy being kids, laughing loud, playing freely, living in the moment, she was busy worrying about things no child should even have to think about, whether the bills would get paid, whether her mom was about to snap, whether the tension in the house would finally explode. She wasn't raised in safety. She was raised in survival, and survival forces maturity before you're ready. She became the adult in the room, not because she wanted to, but because someone had to be. And in most cases, the real adults weren't doing their job. So she stepped in emotionally, mentally, sometimes even physically, to keep the pieces together. She learned how to read moods like weather forecasts, knew when to stay silent, knew when to fix things she didn't break. She became the problem solver, the mediator, the listener, the backup parent, sometimes all at once. And the scariest part, no one even noticed what that was doing to her. On the outside, she looked like a strong, responsible little girl. But on the inside, she was aging faster than anyone could see. While her peers were dreaming, she was analyzing. While they were carefree, she was carrying burdens twice her size. That's why today, the Sigma woman often seems older than her years. Not in appearance, but in energy. There's a depth, a seriousness, a sense that she's been through things most people haven't. And that's because she has. Her emotional age outran her physical age a long time ago. But let this be a truth she never forgets. It was never her job to carry what others dropped. Her wisdom is real. Her maturity is earned. But the weight she still carries doesn't have to stay forever. You were forced to be the adult far too early. Now it's time to be something you never got the chance to be, free. Number 8. She was gaslit into believing her intuition was wrong. Even as a child, the Sigma female had a sharp inner compass. She could feel when something wasn't right, when someone was lying, when tension was building, when danger was near. Her gut would speak up, her body would tense, her instincts would scream, "This doesn't feel safe." But every time she voiced those feelings, she was shut down. "You're being dramatic." "That's not what happened. You're imagining things." Again and again she was told that what she felt wasn't real, that what she saw wasn't happening, that her truth was wrong. That's gaslighting, and it's one of the most damaging things you can do to a child who's still learning to trust her perception of the world. For her, it was emotional betrayal. The very people who were supposed to protect her were the ones messing with her sense of reality. So she did what many Sigma females do. She turned inward. She stopped asking for confirmation. She stopped explaining how she felt. She stopped expecting to be believed, and instead, she sharpened her intuition in silence. She made a vow without even realizing it. "I'll trust myself, no matter what anyone says." Now she trusts energy over words. She picks up on people's vibes before they speak. She listens to the discomfort in her chest more than the reassurance from someone's mouth. And sometimes, she'll believe herself even when reality tries to gaslight her again. People may call her suspicious or guarded, but what they don't know is, she was trained to doubt herself, and she fought like hell to unlearn that. If this is your story, know this. Your intuition was never wrong. What was wrong was the way people made you feel for having it. You weren't imagining things. You were just surrounded by people who wanted you to ignore the truth they were too afraid to face. Your intuition is your power. Never let anyone take it from you again. Number 9. She developed hyper-responsibility as a survival trait. She didn't become responsible because she wanted to be praised for it. She became responsible because there was no one else. When things went wrong, she cleaned up the mess. When people failed each other, she filled the gap. When emotions spilled everywhere, she quietly mopped them up, even when they weren't hers. She wasn't the hero. She was the fallback plan, the emotional janitor, the one expected to always keep it together. Why? Because others around her didn't. This wasn't strength, it was survival. Somewhere along the line, she got the message, spoken or unspoken, that if she didn't step up, everything would fall apart. So she did. Over and over again, she became the fixer, the overthinker, the one who apologized even when it wasn't her fault, the one who took on more than she should, because deep down she feared what would happen if she didn't. Now she's grown, but the pattern hasn't left. She still feels that reflex kick in, to take care of everyone else, to hold it all together, to be the rock. And here's the hard part. She doesn't know where responsibility ends and self-abandonment begins. She calls it helping, but sometimes it's just bleeding for people who won't even notice. Sigma females like her are often praised for being capable, strong, dependable. But nobody asks how heavy that cape has become. No one sees the exhaustion underneath. If this hits home, this is your reminder. Being responsible doesn't mean destroying yourself in the process. You are not required to carry what isn't yours. You are allowed to say, "This isn't my job." You don't need to earn your worth by being useful to people who'd never do the same for you. You weren't born to be the cleanup crew for other people's chaos. You were born to be free. Start choosing yourself even when it feels unnatural, especially then. That's where healing begins. Number 10. She was never allowed to just be a child. Most people look back on their childhood and see laughter, play, and freedom, but not her. The Sigma female's early years weren't filled with playgrounds and daydreams. They were shaped by pressure, responsibility, and emotional survival. Whether it was due to family dysfunction, illness in the home, neglect, or abandonment, one thing was certain. She had to grow up fast. She didn't have the luxury of being carefree. She was the one picking up the slack, holding in tears, staying strong when everyone else was falling apart. She wasn't nurtured. She was expected to cope. She didn't get protected. She became the protector. No one asked if she was okay. They just assumed she'd handle it. So she did. She learned how to manage chaos at an age when she should have been playing with dolls or making silly mistakes. And though she's grown now, there's still a part of her that feels robbed, like she missed a whole chapter of life she'll never get back. That's why solitude is sacred to her. People think she's antisocial or emotionally distant, but they don't understand. Alone is where she finally gets to exhale. It's where she can drop the armor. No expectations, no pressure to perform or fix anyone, just stillness. In her solitude, she lets the child in her come back to life, the one who never got to be loud, messy, playful, or free. That quiet space, it's not emptiness, it's healing. If this feels familiar, hear this. You weren't weak, you were forced to be strong too early. And your love of solitude isn't a flaw. It's your inner child finally finding peace. You earned your calm. You deserve to rest in it without guilt. You're not broken. You're someone who survived without a childhood and still found a way to bloom. Number 11. She watched love turn toxic and took notes. Love wasn't soft in her world. It wasn't safe, steady, or nurturing. It was sharp. It had rules. It had strings attached. One day it smiled, the next it vanished. Sometimes it hurt, and then pretended it didn't. And she, just a child, was watching every moment. She saw love turn into manipulation. If you really cared, you'd do this. She saw love disappear when it got hard. You're too much, I'm done. She saw it withheld like a punishment and used like a weapon. And while it broke her inside, she also paid attention. She studied every crack in the system. Every time someone said, I love you, but didn't act like it, she made mental notes. Every betrayal, every empty apology, every guilt trip, she filed it away. Not to become like them, but to make damn sure she never fell for it. This is how the Sigma female is built. Her walls aren't made of bitterness, they're made of experience. They're not there to keep love out completely. They're there to make sure the wrong kind of love never gets in again. She doesn't let people in easily, not because she's cold, but because she knows how fast love can turn toxic. She doesn't melt at sweet words, she watches actions. She's not impressed by charm. She's scanning for consistency, respect, and effort. If love has to be earned, then earning her trust comes with a test most people fail. To the Sigma woman, protecting her peace is not optional, it's essential. She already saw what happens when you let the wrong kind of love in. That's why she now moves differently, with caution, with clarity, and with a quiet promise to herself. I won't let what broke me before break me again. She doesn't hate love, she just refuses to settle for anything less than the real thing. In final words, some women break down, others break open, and become someone the world wasn't ready for. Every one of these emotional scars shaped the Sigma female into who she is now, sharp, grounded, quietly powerful. Not because she was born that way, but because life forced her to adapt. Forced her to see things early, to carry too much, to figure things out without a guidebook. And yet, she didn't fold. She learned. She observed. She built herself from the ground up. If you saw yourself in these stories, know this. You are not damaged. You are defined by depth. You are the one who wasn't protected, so you learned to become your own protector. You are the one who loved without getting it back, so you learned to love without losing yourself. You are the one who was misunderstood, underestimated, maybe even punished for being different, but you didn't shrink. You learned to walk alone, and now silence is your strength. You learned to read people, and now you see truth before it's spoken. You learned that love can hurt, and now you love with clarity, not blind hope. Being a Sigma female isn't about fitting into anyone's mold. It's about finally realizing you were never meant to. You are rare, you are unshakable. You are not for everyone, and that's your power. So stop questioning why you are the way you are. You didn't become her by accident. You became her through fire, through silence, through survival. And that woman, you, deserves to move through this world knowing she is not broken. She is built brick by brick, scar by scar, strong in ways most people will never understand, and that's what makes you unstoppable. Thank you for watching The Rare Gems, and God bless you.